privilege of being an associate professor of accountancy here at the Craig School of Business. I also serve as the director of the Institute for Family Business. This center is dedicated to providing educational resources for family businesses like the ones you represent today. And I know that all of you didn't come all the way here just to hear me talk. Instead, I am delighted to introduce our guest speaker of the day, my colleague, Christina Wyneken. Christina is a seasoned professional in the field of accountancy, a Fresno State graduate in accounting, and a holder of a Master of Science in Taxation from the San Joaquin College of Law. With a strong background in taxation, Christina has amassed a wealth of experience over the years. She has held various roles, including that of being a CPA, a certified public accountant, and she has her own practice. Christina has expertise in tax preparation, consulting, bookkeeping, and that's what's made her a trusted advisor for a lot of our business community. Her commitment to her clients and the industry as a whole is a testament to her professionalism and knowledge. And we are delighted to have you. So please help me welcome Professor Christina Wyneken, please.
So, you know my name, Christina Wyneken, CPA, been in Fresno for most of my life, local person, graduated from high school here and went to Fresno State, like Fernando said, got my accounting degree, became a CPA, and worked with a large local CPA firm for 30 years. And about almost 7 years ago, I ended up going out on my own. And about that time, I gave Fresno State a call and asked if they would have what it would take to teach here. And I got a call back the very same day. And 6 months later, they had an opening. Can you teach 3 classes in 2 weeks, starting in 2 weeks? And I said, oh, sure, I'll teach government and nonprofit accounting and beginning financial accounting to, I think it was about 180 students that semester. And the rest is history. I've been here this is my 6th year teaching. So I am here to, and then since that point I've been, when it says he said solo practitioner, that means I have my own CPA practice. I prepare income tax returns for a lot of various different types of individuals and entities of all sizes. My experience with the large local firm went, clients from, very basic returns all the way up to multi-level family organizations, names you would recognize in the community that, sell their products nationally and internationally and all that. So I have quite a bit of experience there and some experience with some nonprofit entities as well. So, so I'm here to kind of walk through some of the issues and give maybe some tax guidance for small family businesses. So you have a copy of of my slides here. You should have gotten that. And so you can hopefully see that. I think it came out a little bit light, but hopefully. And feel free to ask questions if it pertains, to what we're talking about here. It might make a lot of sense if you don't understand something or have something you want to ask a question about. Why do you need an entity? Does anybody? I go over this in my beginning financial accounting classes. Why do you want to have an entity? We just had this conversation outside in the lobby. What do you think? Absolutely, 100%. You get a gold star today. That's the reason. I tell my students, you don't form an entity to save taxes because that doesn't really do anything for you. And it's going to cost you actually to have an entity, right? You're going to have in California, most entities have to pay an $800 minimum tax every year, and it could be more than that. And besides that, you have to probably will have to file a separate income tax return, and probably aren't going to do that yourself. Maybe you can, But if you can't, then you have to pay somebody to do that as well. So make sure that you don't decide on having an entity or the type of the entity without consulting a financial and a legal advisor.
Is a trust considered an entity?
No.
No.
Well, it is an entity, but it's not something you would form to put a business into. It's more an estate planning vehicle. Okay.
Well, what if on that estate you're farming?
Well, you're still, if you want to limit liability, you're still probably going to need a business entity that we'll be talking about here. So yeah, trusts are formed generally, they start out with a living trust for an individual so that they avoid probate when they die, and then it becomes a permanent testamentary trust after they die. And so that's kind of how that works. They are very important and necessary in a lot of cases, but you don't put a business typically into a trust. Okay.
Can you repeat the questions like that people ask you? Can you
Oh,
repeat
okay.
them in the mic for the translation?
Sure. Thanks for that. Okay, so the types of entities I have listed here: sole proprietorships. That's me. Me as a CPA, I'm still a sole proprietorship. I don't want to pay a minimum tax, and I don't want to have to file a separate tax return for an entity. So what I do is have a really good insurance, right? Because obviously there are liability issues. So sole proprietorships, partnerships between spouses and or LLCs will be considered disregarded for tax purposes. Okay, and what that means is you don't file a separate entity return. You just include that information on the individual's tax return. Limited liability companies, I'm sure most of you here are familiar what those are. They can, as I stated there, they can be single member LLCs, or they can be LLCs with multiple members, in which case they're filing a separate federal income tax return. And then corporations. There are a couple types of corporations. One is this regular old-fashioned C corporation that pays taxes on its net income. The tax rate federal right now is 21%. Or you can be what's called an S corporation, small business corporation, and that in some ways resembles a partnership. The income from that corporation, whether it have one owner or multiple owners, that income on an S corporation goes to the individual who is the owner and gets reported on their tax return. They don't pay federal income taxes. Later on, we'll talk about state income taxes. And then partnerships. There are a couple different types of partnerships. General partnerships and then limited partnerships. And those have different liability issues. General partnerships, you don't limit your liability there. And they're very commonly used as well. Also, the other complication in all of this is you can be an LLC and decide to be taxed as a corporation, either a C corporation or an S corporation. So the water gets muddied even more there. Sorry, I just that is another complication. So moving on to taxes, I heard that there's a lot of interest in hearing about taxes here. So I want to be able to cover quite a bit in this area. So only C corporations are separate taxable entities subject to income tax. All the other entities I've been talking about, their income flows through to individuals, and the individuals pay tax on them. Some of these entities file income or tax returns. They're not always income tax returns, technically called that, but they don't pay taxes themselves. So partnerships will have to file a return. but there's no tax payments on those typically. S corporations don't pay federal income taxes, but they do pay a 1.5% tax to the state of California Franchise Tax Board. Okay, and then limited liabilities because of they have filing as a limited liability company. You don't pay federal income taxes again. That income gets passed through to the owners, but California has an $800 minimum tax on every year for the LLC, and there is a gross receipts fee where when your gross receipts get over $250,000, that starts increasing as well. It's something to be considered if your business is going to have a very high number for gross receipts, and it may have high cost of goods sold with maybe a small profit margin, but the gross receipts tax bites people sometimes. So something to take into consideration. Sole proprietorships don't file separate tax returns. The Schedule C is part of the owner's personal tax return. So, and then the last one there, LLCs can elect to be taxed as either C Corps or S Corps, like I said before. So really complicated. And, it's probably overwhelming to a lot of people to start out with. But once you get through it and sort through it, then hopefully it, settles down and you can not have to worry about making these kinds of decisions again. Payroll taxes, another area of tax. These are administered by both the IRS, Internal Revenue Service, and the California Employment Development Department. Lots of complications in this area, more than I could probably cover in the next couple hours. But quarterly filing, that's the Form 941 to the IRS. The state equivalent of that, so to speak, is a DE9 wage report plus online tax payments. These must be submitted electronically now. More and more of that is going electronically. Actually isn't that difficult to do once you get the hang of it, kind of a thing. Under the area of payroll taxes annually, you have the wage reports to the Social Security Administration, those W-2s that you're probably familiar with, and then a Form 940 for federal unemployment tax that needs to be filed as well. They're moving more and more towards getting everybody to file that electronically as well, and that's how that one works.
I have a question.
Yes.
So for those sole proprietor, you have to file both two taxes, your own and the business?
It's all going to end up in one place on the tax return. So there's what's called a Schedule C for the business, and it's got your gross receipts and your cost of goods sold, and then your operating expenses, and then that information is transferred to page 1 of the personal tax return, and you pay tax on that along with whatever else you have. Maybe you have a spouse that has wages, or maybe you have a second job. All of that stuff gets combined together. So I forgot to state the question again.
It's okay.
Sorry. Did you get the question?
Yeah, I did get it, but do we have a second mic?
Not for the audience, we do have a second laughter mic for the recording. Do we need to use that one?
No, si pueden elevar su voz cuando hacer una pregunta así para poderlos escuchar. If you could just elevate your voice more so we can hear you for interpretation purposes.
Thank you so much.
Disculpe, yo tengo una pregunta a lo que acaba de explicar ella, no lo entendí muy bien. Mi negocio es muy
I'm so sorry,
pequeño
I do have a question regarding what you just explained.
y nada más soy yo la que trabaja, la que
My
vende todo.
business is small and I'm the one who works, I'm the one who sells everything.
Entonces, cada 3 meses yo puedo reportar a mi
So every 3 months, can I report to EDD? So so sorry.
Yeah.
Se me olvida que hay más en el cuarto. I forget that there's others who might need language accessibility in the room, but she says that she is an individual business owner and she does the work. She does all of the sales. So she's right now asking if she needs to report every 3 months to EDD. Continúe.
Y si, porque yo hago mis taxas, pero yo no sabía que podía pagarle al departamento de desempleo y luego yo cobrarme yo misma en caso que no tenga trabajo.
Because I do my taxes, but I didn't know that I can pay a certain an amount into unemployment and then maybe be able to request unemployment if I'm not working.
So she's really asking if she's entitled to unemployment
Así es
benefits.
que realmente
If
lo que
she-
es la pregunta es que si usted califica para lo que son beneficios de desempleo.
Okay, so it depends on what type of entity, if you have an entity and what type it is. Are you,
Es de negocios de costura,
¿Y es una corporación
No,
o
no, no,
es sole proprietor o una LLC?
una LLC.
So, tiene una LLC. Okay, so she does have an LLC. ¿Es usted la única dueña?
Yo soy la única.
She's the only owner.
Mis
and
ingresos son muy bajos al año, pueden ser 10 a 12 mil dólares por año.
her take-home income is about 10 to 12,000, but she is an LLC that may not have already opted to be treated as an S corp or a corporation.
right? So as an LLC, LLCs, unless they elect to be taxed as an S corporation, in which case you do need to draw a salary. If you elect to do that, the IRS requires a salary from an S corporation for the owner. But it's a common misunderstanding. LLC owners that are taxed more like partnerships or as single member LLCs do not draw salaries from those entities. So therefore you aren't participating in the unemployment tax situation either.
And they cannot, right?
But,
Unless they're S corps or corps, they cannot.
right,
I'm sorry.
thank you. You said it a different way. Thank you for, no, good. Okay, hopefully that was clear. Okay. But I don't know, I'll answer the question you did ask, which was unemployment taxes are paid in quarterly as long as they are still due because they're only assessed on the first $7,000 of wages. So once you hit that limit, you don't have to keep filing that return and paying the tax. Okay, so that is a quarterly tax along with the other ones I talked about. Do you have a question?
I want to explain steps, ¿ok? Por favor. Mira, yo estaba registrado con mi negocio como dueño solo.
I had registered my business as a sole proprietor.
Sí. El primer año hice impuestos con mi esposa y pusimos lo que ella ganó y lo que yo gané.
First year, I filed taxes along
Pero
with my
de
wife, and I
negocio.
put what she earned and what I earned in the business.
Ok. El segundo año no he hecho los siguientes impuestos, pero seguía como propietario solo. Aún
Second
los he
year, I
hecho, sé
haven't
que ya
filed
se
the
pasaron,
taxes,
pero no los he hecho porque tengo una pregunta, ahí es donde viene mi pregunta.
and I
La
haven't done
persona que
it.
me los preparó, resulta que hizo el reporte en mi persona, pero resulta que también hay que hacerlo del negocio. Y ahí es donde yo estoy bien súper confundido. ¿Qué es lo que vas a pagar del negocio o qué vas a reportar de lo?
I haven't filed my second year yet because I have a lot of confusion in regards to what do I file as part of the business and what do I file as myself as an individual. So that's where I have confusion.
Y no tiene LLC, ¿verdad? You don't
Ok.
have an LLC.
Esa es la siguiente pregunta donde voy. Ok. Ahora, esos quedan
Second
pendientes.
question.
Ahora hice una LLC,
So now I
pero no
established an LLC,
quiero la LLC y estamos cambiando a una corporación S.
but I don't want the LLC. So I am now formalizing as an S corp.
Correcto. Entonces, ¿cómo reporto yo? Lo anterior lo reporto como propietario solo y ahora reporto como corporación S.
So
¿Cuál es la diferencia? ¿Y
So-
qué tengo que hacer?
previous income already earned, do I report that as as a sole proprietor and now moving forward as an S corp? I have those questions.
Okay, what does previous income,
El ingreso
Mean.
previo, de que hablamos sobre el ingreso previo. Dice que no había hecho sus impuestos aún.
De este año pasado, de este año no los he
So-
hecho aún. De todo el año, porque como propietario solo los hacía una vez al año.
So prior to filing as an S corp, he has not done the taxes for the income that was previously earned
Este
as
año.
a sole proprietor.
Que tenía que haberlos hecho, tengo entendido que hasta noviembre, ¿verdad?
He had, yeah, so 2022, ¿verdad?
2023 sería, el de este año, ¿no? O
The ones that you filed this year, o sea, los que se hacen este año son del año pasado.
Correcto, de 2022.
Yes, so
2020.
2022 to verify.
so then you would just file the, your tax return that you would have filed anyway. Okay, and then you, once you establish the S corporation, then going forward, you report that income on the S corporation. Okay, so you're gonna have to go back. And by the way, I just wanna say, I have picked up a number of new clients in the last year or so. There've been a whole lot of them that haven't filed for 1, 2, 3 years. If you happen to be in that situation or know somebody that's in that situation, it's become pretty common. So just, make it right and move forward. I've had people come to me and say, well, why should I just go ahead and file now? Well, because there's penalties if you owe taxes and you're just letting that pile up. Get it done as swiftly as you can, but you're not alone. I just want to throw that out there. Yes.
Is there an entity or business tax requirement for 1099?
No, you don't have to be an. Do you get the question?
But if you want to reiterate it for everyone.
Yeah, the question, is there an entity requirement in order to be required to file a 1099? Did I say that?
To submit 1099s to your vendors?
Yeah, no, you just have a requirement is in the course of your business, you paid somebody more than $600. So me as a sole proprietor, if I was paying for contract labor, I'd have to file one as well. Anybody who does. Not everybody you pay has to get a 1099, like if it's more of a personal type of thing. But yeah, those requirements. But you don't have to be an entity to be required to file one. You just have to be operating a business, basically. Hopefully I said that right.
Even if you don't hit the $600, you still write that off.
Yes, even if you don't hit the $600 mark, you can write those off. Yes, that's not part of the deal. It's part of the requirement. But yeah, the other side of that is if you have paid more than $600 and you don't file that 1099, yeah, you could lose that deduction under audit. Okay, that's the stick. No, over. I'm sorry, I probably left that part of the sentence off. Okay. All right. So I think I finished talking about the annual taxes here. Sales and use taxes, this is another whole big area. That's imposed by state governments, at least in our state, on the end user of goods and services. So typically we'd be talking about your customers if you're in that situation. So what is taxed? It's generally tangible personal property plus some service and labor costs that play a part in increasing that or the value of that tangible personal property. Use tax is the tax that's paid on purchase of items for use in California when you buy it from out of state. The governments have done a really good job of trying to get sellers to collect that sales tax for us. So that's, I'm not seeing it show up as much on tax returns where taxpayers are paying that tax because it's already been collected. But it is due if you live in California and go out of state to buy an item and it should have been taxed. There are exemptions. You're probably aware in California, food for humans is not subject to tax in California. Prescriptions are not taxed in California. Believe it or not, they are sales taxable in other areas. And sales to the U.S. government, those would be included as well. Okay, estimated income taxes. Now we're talking about the tax that you as a self-employed person are required to pay on a regular basis. You are not supposed to owe the federal government at the end of the year on April 15th or well, that's when the taxes are due. You're not supposed to owe them usually more than about $1,000. I mean, the number is $1,000. If you owe them a lot more and you don't meet an exception to the penalties for that tax, you will get assessed penalties for not paying your estimated taxes. Same thing goes for the state. Their number is not as much, I guess, but you also are required to pay your state taxes in quarterly as well. Let's see. So this applies to individuals as well as to most entities if there are taxes that are, of a certain level. Yes?
Yo tengo una pregunta acerca de lo que dijo.
I have a question regarding what you just stated.
Como dijo, de pagar los impuestos cada 3 meses, ¿es opcional si uno también quiere o es legal que tengamos que hacerlo cada 3 meses o cada año?
You just mentioned quarterly taxes. Is that like the law? Is that an obligation that we need to pay our quarterly taxes or see or if it's optional? Quarterly taxes.
In almost every case, it's not optional, right? Even for your now I'm talking about personal income taxes on what you're talking. What?
¿Se refiere al impuesto del sales tax o se refiere a los income taxes?
A los taxes.
So I'm asking if it's,
Taxes del negocio.
there's several taxes out in the business, like varios taxes en negocio. Entonces, el sales tax es lo que le cobra a un producto cuando lo vende, ¿verdad? Lo que está hablando
Su impuesto de venta.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of a clarification there. That's why I got
Falta un poco de clarificación porque hay impuesto de los impuestos y luego está lo que son los impuestos de lo que es venta.
Okay. Pero para taxes regulares no hay de 6 meses. Income tax? Taxes regulares.
But yeah, regular taxes do you have to pay like every 6 months? Is there something of that sort?
O sea, mi pregunta es, así como el sales tax te pone
My question is,
cada 3
just like
meses,
sales tax are run every 3 months,
cuando haces tus taxes regulares,
when you do your
también es
regular
cada
taxes,
año, antes de marzo,
is it just annually before March? Or
o también es como cada 2 veces al año?
is it also something that you could do twice a year or 3 months?
So now you know what I do in my job, right? Keep all of this straight. Or try. For myself and my clients. All of the taxes I've talked about so far, payroll taxes, sales taxes, and now these estimated taxes, they're all due basically quarterly, okay? Sales taxes, I left that one line out. That depends on what your volume is of your sales, and the state will tell you how often you have to pay those, but typically it's every quarter, okay? And the estimated tax due dates for income taxes are a little different than the due dates for payroll taxes and sales taxes. Okay, payroll and sales taxes are every 3 months, and then you get 1 month to pay them. Estimated income taxes have their own due dates, which are roughly quarterly, but not exactly. Sorry, I don't make this up. Let's see, they can be paid by, you can pay it in with a check with a voucher. They don't like you to do that, but you can still do it. You can pay online. You can do direct pay. You don't even have to have an account. You can just go online and pay your taxes. Now, I'm talking about income taxes to the IRS or to the Franchise Tax Board. Those are all ways you can pay taxes, okay? And then, yes, there are definitely penalties and interest for failure to pay these estimated taxes timely. There are exceptions, like when you're a new business, you know, if you didn't owe money the year before or you had no tax liability the year before, then you can wait and pay them all at one time in April, the first year after you didn't have any taxes at all. But then after that, you're going to have to be on a quarterly payment schedule. Okay. And then the last area of taxes I put up here was Secretary of State, California Secretary of State filings, the Statement of Information. This is one that there's a couple things about this. First of all, you are required to do this. I gave the information here. First of all, you can do it yourself online. Okay. Corporations need to file every year in the month that you registered your corporation. LLCs file every 2 years, depending on the year that you registered, okay? And then you're supposed to file if information changes or you named an agent for service of process when you formed your entity. If that changes, you're supposed to file there. The fee is only $20 or $25, okay? Many times people get a solicitation that looks like it's coming from the government, and I just want to throw this out here. I said, beware of fraudulent solicitations from private companies that want you to give the information to them, and they want you to pay them like $400 or $500 to do it. That is fraud. In fact, if it happens, you should report them, okay? Not too many things infuriate me more than people that are vultures like that. So that is, you do not have to pay this statement of information. There's no fee other than the $20 or $25 annual or semi-annual fee. But if you don't file that statement and they come back at you, the penalty is $250. And there's not really any getting out of that penalty either. Yes?
What do you mean by when agent for service of process resigns?
Oh, so when you formed your entity, you had to tell them, give them information like who they can contact if somebody wants to file suit against you or locate you. You have to give that information on the application forms for your entity. So if the person you named there changes, then you have to report the new person. They always want to know who to get a hold of that's responsible for the entity.
That's all that means, statement of information.
Yeah, that's covered in there. Yeah, just my warning is don't miss it. If you're required to do it, don't miss it because it's expensive. And it's a waste of money, of course. Okay. All right, moving on. Oh, yep.
Ok, tengo una pregunta de esta misma forma. Ellos nos mandan recordatorio, nosotros estamos al pendiente cada 2 años.
Do we receive reminders about our 2-year filings, or do we need to be on top of it?
I'm pretty sure they send a reminder. And frankly, I'll tell you, there is a grace period for filing it too. It's several months. But yeah, but you should also put that somehow on your calendar to remind yourself too. So like if you're a corporation, every year that you come to the month that you formed your entity, you should be thinking you have to file that statement of information. Yes?
Can't they go onto the state of California website and check the status of their state?
Yes, anybody can. I could go and check your status.
Right.
Yeah.
There is a way to do it.
Yes. Yeah. And like I said, it's $20 or $25, and And it's, yeah, you don't want to get caught with the penalty on that one. Okay. Let's, licensing and other regulations, just some things to be aware of. Entities are not formed with the IRS. If you haven't gotten that far in your process, entities are formed, that right belongs to the state of California to issue you the right to be an entity, a separate entity in the state of California. And that's true in any state. So you form the entity on the one side, and then the IRS recognizes that entity, hopefully. Then you file for an employer ID number, employer identification number with the IRS. You don't necessarily, depending on what your type of business is, what your entity is, whatever, or if you have an entity, they're not always required. However, if you need to do some reporting like 1099s or things like that, you're going to have to put a number, identifying number on there. And you probably don't want to put your social security number on some 1099s that are going out to people that aren't your friends or relatives, right? Even if they were. So you can go out and get that number, that EIN, even if you're not required to have it, but you can have it to use for situations like that. Sometimes banks or lenders or places like that require an EIN, even though for income tax purposes it's not required because you're not filing a separate tax return. Federal EIN. It's fairly easy to do that if you know what you're doing, and that shouldn't be something that you would have to pay somebody a lot of money to do for you. You have to register to pay sales taxes if they're applicable, and then acquire the software you're going to need to keep track of that. That's a whole nother ball of complication there. So if sales taxes apply to you because you're selling a product, then yeah, you'll have to look at that. Let's see, city licensing. If you're operating in the city of Fresno, I put the information there. Owners and people having ownership in businesses operating in the city of Fresno are required by the municipal code to obtain a business tax certificate and file another quarterly tax report. So keep that in mind. And then also the city of Fresno wants to make sure you are properly zoned for the business that you're doing. So that's what the zone clearance is. So just to throw that out there. Yes.
Solamente para lanzar esa pregunta más.
¿El certificado de negocios viene siendo el que te registras con el bar?
Is the business certificate the one that you register with the bar for? Con
la compañía, ay, no sé cómo se llama, pero es como bar. No sé, son las abreviaciones, pero...
The abbreviations are BAR, not.
¿Es el certificado o cuál es el certificado?
Is that the certificate that we're speaking about, or which certificate are we speaking of?
I was talking about a city license for having a business in the city of Fresno. Okay. Yeah, I haven't even gotten into any other types of licenses that are more specific to whatever your profession or occupation is. Okay, another one?
I also want to add that I learned that you only need one EIN, if not, even if you have multiple companies.
We have only one. You learned that you only need one EIN, even if you have multiple companies. Really depends from one situation to the next. Yeah, I have people that I have a client that has multiple entities. She makes some badges and sells them on Etsy, and she's doing something else. I forget, she's buying stuff and selling them. And yeah, she doesn't need separate EINs for that kind of activity.
I did not getting another EIN, but you only need one. Doesn't matter how many companies.
Yeah, if you have two completely different businesses, though, you'll need probably a second one, depending on the situation.
Because there were two different businesses, and they said you only need one.
Well, if they're being reported under one,
May I add a little bit to that? So if you have a separate entity, an LLC, a corporation, that is gonna have its own IDs.
Yeah.
So, but if you're a sole proprietor, then you have multiple businesses as a sole proprietor. It is really just yourself that is running the business and owns the business, the entity is you. So then you only need one EIN, please. Just to clarify that.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Ok. Como yo tengo la corporación ahorita, pero también como estoy registrado como agricultor.
I have the corporation right now, but I am also registered as an in agriculture farmer.
Como farmers, correcto. Tengo que hacer mi reporte de la corporación y aparte el reporte de independiente y aparte
Do I
tengo que
have-
hacer los personales.
Do I have to do my report as the corporation and then also as a farmer and then also as an individual?
Again, it probably depends on your facts and circumstances. Are these all farming entities? Is this all a farming business that you're in?
So todas las negocios de farming,
La corporación la tengo por mi negocio
No,
el negocio de artesanía.
de artesanías, correcto.
So,
No. No, the other business is through, he has an artisan business.
Correcto. La agricultura la tengo por beekeeper.
And for agriculture, he is a beekeeper.
Y aparte tengo que hacer mi reporte personal.
So question is, so he's now mentioned two business entities, and then do I also have to do my personal filings?
Yes. The answer to that is yes. The entities may or may not be paying taxes themselves as a separate taxable entity. And if they are not, and that income passes through to you, then that goes onto your personal tax return. But either way, sounds like you've got at least two tax returns and maybe another one with what you just said. I mean, I would consider beekeeping and the other farming you're doing, that could be one, just from what I'm hearing. But if you're talking about artisan, another business there, that might be another venture somewhere. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Back here?
Tengo otra pregunta. Es con referencia a lo que están hablando. Vamos a decir, yo tengo una LLC y es nada más de sanitaria. Pero
If I have, in reference to what we are currently speaking about, if I have an LLC and it is tied to janitorial services,
pero también tengo una licencia para vender como en los families, en eBay, en lo que son las plataformas de ventas.
but I also have a seller's license to sell like at the swap meets, eBay, or on other selling platforms.
¿Cómo reporto esos impuestos? Tengo que ponerlos porque me sugirieron ponerlo en la misma LLC, pero si es de janitorial, ¿se puede hacer?
How do I report that income? I had been suggested to report them on my same EIN for the janitorial system, but for the janitorial services. But can I do it? Report the sales along with her janitorial services?
I don't see, what I would suggest is you've got your LLC and your janitorial business. And then maybe you have another Schedule C just for the eBay, did you say Etsy, eBay? And handle that separately, because these are now pretty different situations. So combining it all into one is probably going to lead to more confusion and maybe misreporting. Okay.
Entonces, al hacer los impuestos, yo tengo que poner otro como personal.
Then when I do my income tax filing, do I have to do the other entity or services for sales on my personal taxes?
Yes, I would say so, but I don't think you would necessarily need an EIN for that. I got clients that are doing those sales types of things, and unless you have a particular situation why, I don't think you actually need an EIN for that. For the online selling.
No tengo un IEN para el otro. Well, licencia.
So I don't have another EIN for the other business. I only have the name and the seller's license or permit, right?
La ciudad y lo que se requiere.
The requirements.
Entonces, eso es lo que gana el año, lo necesito poner como, con la parte que me, otra cosa, tengo la pregunta, ¿está correcto que me haga un autopago mensualmente únicamente por lo de janitorial? ¿Estoy bien ahí?
So on my annual earnings, so she's talking about the annual earnings and then kind of stopped at that thought. But the question was, from the janitorial services, is it okay that I am paying myself wages through the janitorial services?
May I ask a further clarification, if you don't mind me? ¿Se refiere a pagarse usted un salario o simplemente retirar fondos? Okay, so perfect. So I was asking if she's actually withdrawing money just as she earns money from that business, or if she wants to pay herself a salary. And the answer is going to be, you can definitely withdraw money, but go ahead.
Yeah, depending on what your situation is with that janitorial business, that's what we're talking about, right? If it's a straight LLC and single member, you're not taking a salary out of that. Remember that you shouldn't be taking a salary out of that. But whatever money you earn there is yours to spend however you wish. Okay, because you're going to get taxed on it no matter what. And that's why. So you don't have to call it salary or anything like that. It's owner's draw, basically.
And that's for LLC, right?
I was just talking about LLC. Right. And again, almost every situation is unique these days. So yeah, it's hard to even put it all down on the
And I'll keep interjecting, if you don't mind, just to verify some of the questions.
Interactuando para responder a cualquier pregunta o clarificar.
Regresando un poquito a la pregunta, entonces simplemente
Coming back to the question.
En la forma de lo ganado anualmente, simplemente hay una línea donde diga se ganó esto por ventas.
On the annual earnings, is there just a line, simply a line that says these are the gross income due to these sales?
That's reported on Schedule C as well. Okay, so sounds like if you've got a single member LLC, I think that's what we were talking about, then you're going to have that for the janitorial business. You're going to have a separate one, I think, for reporting the online sales. And by the way, I heard you say something about seller's permit. That's an identification. That's an ID you get for selling, for sales tax. That doesn't have a lot to do with having an EIN. You may not need it, probably don't need an EIN for that particular business. Okay.
Right here, there was a question.
¿Quién nos podría ayudar para saber cuál sería la identidad correcta como para mi negocio? Y si hacerme una LLC, una corporación, no sé muy bien la experiencia.
Question. Who would be able to help guide me on whether to elect being an LLC or a corporation? I think that I'm not too sure on the election. Who would be able to guide?
Yeah, that's where I said at the beginning, you need to be talking probably to an attorney if you have liability issues, and to some kind of an accountant or tax preparer that can help you with that. Okay. So, and sometimes I work with the attorneys to get to the right answer on these things too. Okay, but sometimes a tax preparer can just handle it if we're not talking about a situation where liability is really a big issue. All right. Here.
Voy a poner mi negocio como dueño único
I'm going to establish my business as a sole proprietor,
y voy a tener un empleado.
and I am going to have one employee.
Entonces, ahí cómo le voy a hacer para pagar los impuestos.
So when it comes to this situation, how am I going to go about to pay the taxes?
Okay, so then you're going to need to get an employer identification number and just start reporting it properly. I don't know if we've gotten to that part of what I wrote here, somewhere I wrote. This gets so complicated with payroll taxes that you may want to consider hiring somebody to do just the payroll taxes. And I want to let you know, I think I put in here somewhere, they're the big name. There's some big companies that everybody kind of knows about for payroll taxes. There's some smaller companies too that maybe are better for dealing with sole proprietors and, you know, 1 or 2 employees or whatever. And it's even worth it sometimes to do it just for 1 employee. Okay, and I think I said shop around and ask questions, because it can be really expensive or it can be relatively reasonable, the fees for payroll tax preparation. Okay, I've done it on my own and done all the work, but I would probably consider paying somebody to do it too, automated.
Or the software.
Or the software, yeah, depending on how much you love QuickBooks or whatever it is you're using. Or don't.
I have a quick question when it comes to an employee and a helper.
Yes.
For instance, myself, I'm the only person doing business, correct?
Mhm.
But my kids do help. Now, is that something that I should be adding them as employees?
We're
Or-
getting there.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, thank you. I'm glad to hear somebody ask the question, because I was ready to move in that direction, I think. Let's see what's coming up here. Let me talk about bookkeeping for a couple minutes. Make sure when you start out that you are establishing your accounting procedures. You understand what's required, what you're going to need to give to your tax preparer or have ready to do your taxes. And then decide if you're going to use accounting software or use a third-party bookkeeping and accounting service. And figure out who's going to be preparing the tax returns. And that will kind of help determine what direction you go with, you know, the bookkeeping or whatever. So, you know, you've got lots of different choices in that area. And shop around. Ask those questions. It's worth it. And then also, you know, keep in mind if sales tax are going to be an issue for your company, take that all into consideration too. It can be a real pain. And then decide how you're going to handle payroll. And we'll get a little bit more. I have a little more on payroll here. And like, oh, here it is. It might be best to work with a third-party payroll preparer, or if you can if you're pretty good with QuickBooks, or if that's your software or whatever the software is you have and their payroll section. But shop around. If it sounds like it's too expensive, you know, ask around. Okay. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about employing family members. For a family business, there's actually some opportunities here that sometimes people aren't aware of. I kind of put some of the details up here. If spouses operate a business together, they may be regarded as partners, regardless of whether they have a formal partnership agreement. Depends on kind of how you want that to come out. Proprietor who employs a spouse they're going to be exempt from this unemployment taxes, but you are liable for income tax withholding, Social Security, Medicare on a spouse. Okay, and maybe you want that, or maybe you want to handle it some other way, but I'm just giving you what the requirements are. If it's a spouse, taxpayer and spouse situation, you may opt to form a qualified joint venture, but you must agree to not be treated as a partnership. So again, this might be a consultation you need to have with an accountant or an attorney as well. And there is the ability, if you have a proprietorship, for a spouse to receive tax-free reimbursement of medical expenses. So if that's a situation, for you, then that would be worth exploring with an accountant as well.
Like an HSA.
What?
Like an HSA.
It's not even that, because if you've got a situation, he asked like an HSA, if you're only employing the one spouse and no other employees, you can set up a medical reimbursement situation without an HSA, HRA, whatever it is. So yeah, like I said, there's some ins and outs of this whole family employment situation that are, and then children. I don't know if that was where you were thinking of. First of all, the wages have to be appropriate and reasonable. You can't pay, well, you could pay a 6-month-old a wage if they were going to be your models of your something in your advertising or whatever. But again, appropriate and reasonable, okay? The status of those payments is going to depend on the child's age, okay? So if they're under 18 and it's a sole proprietorship or a partnership where it's the parents that are the partners, you won't have to pay Social Security, Medicare, or unemployment taxes. And this is a real opportunity to get a deduction on the business for your income taxes and report up to about $13,000, because that's the standard deduction of wages paid to that child, and they don't have to pay tax on it. In fact, they aren't even required to file a return because their income's not high enough. So if you got a couple of those kids, then you can, and you could even take advantage of the IRA, individual retirement account situation, get their taxable income down and, you know, pay them a little more, have that money set aside or not, but get their income down, put it in a Roth IRA, and it can be sitting there for if they want to go to college or some kind of training after high school. I thought I saw movement.
Can you establish a Roth IRA for each child that you have? And at what age can you start adding them onto the taxes, or as pagándoles un salario?
No, bueno, pagándoles un salario o haciéndolo del Roth IRA, que le metes.
Paying them a salary or including them in a Roth IRA?
Yeah, in order to have an IRA, they have to have earnings. So you have to be paying them. Yeah, they have to have earned income. Well, that's appropriate and reasonable.
So child labor laws.
If they can do, somebody's example was, sorry, can they make it's not your business, but could they make photocopies, or could they take out the trash, or could they, you can
Vamos a decir que diga, bueno, mis niños vayan y pasen tarjetas.
go door to door and deliver cards or something. Yes. Yeah. Reasonable and appropriate for what
they
they're
have to
doing.
meet minimum wage. Do they have to meet minimum wage for those children, or can you?
Actually, I read they do not. You
Okay.
can totally take advantage of it. Sorry, I don't mean it like that, but yeah, from a labor standpoint, and not even those hours that they work. If think about these farms in the Midwest, where they have to work.
So the dollar amount is $13,000.
Roughly, it's the standard deduction.
But when it goes into an IRA, a Roth IRA, then it can be more.
Yes.
Okay, so as long as, for instance, I'm depositing into that IRA, then my kid can just be like richer than me.
Yeah, if that's how you want to set it up, I'd caution you on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, having just put 2 kids through college, yeah.
Yeah. But is there a limit to the amount, like the yearly limits on Roth IRAs or standard IRAs?
Yeah, earnings for one,
Right.
and then it's the
Like the 19,000
6,000.
for the Roth and
Yeah,
okay.
How much did you say?
6,000 per
6,000
person,
6,000 per
or
persona.
earned income
O
if it's
lo que
less.
son las ganancias.
each year, right? Was there-
Pero eso siempre cuando sería cuando no salga el número rojo, ¿verdad? El negocio.
But that is, once again, as long as you're not in the red in the business, correct? In losses?
No, you can pay your children and create more losses if that's what you really want to do. Legally, I don't know if that's a good idea economically. Okay, so that was for kids under 18, you don't have to pay those other Social Security, Medicare, FUTA. If they're between 18 and 20, then you treat them like the spouse. They're exempt for FUTA taxes. I have seen situations where it makes sense to go ahead and pay those kids from 18 to 20 and pay the Social Security because you get the other benefits of being able to put money away and get the tax deduction besides on your business. So something to work out. And then if they're 21 and over, you have to treat them like any other employee, so for payroll tax purposes. But you can still employ them, of course, and make them do whatever it is you need them to do.
And you will be the right person to help us to like guide us to know that I'm a really hesitant family man. So I have all my kids working in the law.
Yes.
And you know, sometimes like they put me over numbers because they just get whatever they want. Or they need this and I just buy. But I don't know how to go about it.
Yeah, so setting up the payroll type of thing and all that. Yeah, so we're still talking about reporting payroll and stuff, but it's just depends on their ages and the situation, how it gets done.
Y por ejemplo, si es como un papá que es más de 65 y de todos modos ayuda a ya sea barrer, cuidar o algo, ¿eso entraría algo así o no?
And for example, if it is an elder parent, maybe 65 years or older, does this allow for that type of situation? Yes or no?
If you're employing your parents in the business, they get treated like a spouse. So same types of rules, if that's what you were asking. So not subject to unemployment.
Pero sería empleado y ponerle workers' comp o sería como familia.
So would we need to establish them as an employee and add them onto our workers' comp policy, or would they be employed as family?
I'm not an insurance agent, but you'd have to talk to you probably should check with your workers' comp insurance on that one. What was the other part of that question? Was that it? Okay. All right. So like I said, there's opportunities like to deduct wages paid to children without having them subject to tax. Yes?
So nieces and nephews, are they considered part of the children part, or does that has to be your kids?
Yeah, no, it has to be your kids.
So the nieces and nephews, when they come and help,
You can't abuse them. From a work standpoint. You can't work them to death.
no.
Or
But
maybe
is
you
that
can.
something that I can be claimed as taxes?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, I mean, you're gonna be including them if you're gonna deduct the taxes, or the expenses, you need to be reporting the wages and giving them 1099s or whatever's appropriate. Okay, in the back. Uh-oh.
Do siblings go in those categories?
Do siblings go in those categories? Your siblings? They would be treated like any other employee. Yeah. Again, but there's, opportunities. If you're gonna have to give your siblings money anyway, you might as well employ them to do it.
Might be a dumb question, but workers' comp, does it matter the amount of employees you have it and require it?
Yeah, workers' comp, does it matter the employees you have? Yes, it's based on your wages that you pay.
I'm saying the number of employees.
Starting
If you have
from
one,
You
No,
got one,
from
you got
one, yeah.
Okay.
Y eso que dicen de los hijos menores de 18 años, ¿cómo los tienes que poner seguro social o qué es lo que tienes? ¿Cómo das a saber que está trabajando para ti o vas a dar un pago a ese niño?
So when it comes to the children under 18, how do you declare or state that you are paying them an earned income?
Well,
How do you report it? Like,
you
do you
report
add
it on a W-2.
en una
You're gonna have
W2?
payroll.
En una W2 de que usted está pagando sus impuestos de empleado.
Entonces tengo, o sea, todos modos se tiene que hacer W2 y se tiene que pagar como empleado. Entonces tienes que contratar el boleto y pagarle al niño y todo eso, ¿verdad?
So either way, if you're having to pay them on a W2 and to pay them the salary, then you also have to add them to your workers' comp.
It's my understanding,
Es
yes,
mi
but
entendimiento que sí,
again,
pero una vez más,
I don't sell workers' comp.
yo no vendo como
Not
lo
an
que
agent.
es el seguro.
If you're, okay, so a lot of this stuff I've been talking to you about is if you are a sole proprietor. So if that's not the case and you've got a corporation or a partnership with someone other than your spouse as a partner, then but it still might be advantageous to pay wages to the children through that entity. So say you were a C Corp or an S Corp or whatever. There's sometimes good reasons for doing it like that. All right. I think we're probably pretty far to the end here. I just had a couple more tips.
So, when I start doing the taxes, because I haven't done it yet, what is the minimum do I have to report for taxes? Or like,
Basically that 13,000
well,
ish,
let's say I've been less than that.
then you're not required to file. Okay. The question was, what am I required to file based, depending on what my income is? I mean, yeah, it's approximately $13,000. Okay. Let's see, reducing your risk of an audit. Make sure you have accurate and thorough business records. Some tips I came across. Don't use rounded numbers on tax returns. I get clients that give me their list of expenses and they're all nice $500, $1,700. That's a red flag right there, guys. Don't do that. Make sure you're on top of what your workers' classifications are, employee versus independent contractor. Don't get caught in that mess. That's can be a real problem. Talk to an attorney, accountant, whatever. Make sure you understand what the rules are. Make sure your deductions are accurate. I didn't even go into home office deductions and what that can do for you. If you have an area of your home that you are using exclusively and continuously for business, yes, you can probably qualify for a home office deduction, even if you're renting. So, and if it's a daycare business, there are some special rules related to that. So it can really work to your favor to take a home office deduction. But make sure everything's documented, of course.
Tengo una pregunta. Como
I have a
al
question.
reducir todo esto, al hacer los impuestos, y vamos a decir que tú tienes ganancias, que tuviste un ejemplo a $100,000 de ganancias.
When you're filing taxes and you've had earnings, let's say about $100,000 in
Pero
earnings,
tienes una deducción de todo esto.
but if you have a deduction of all of these
Empleados,
items because of
oficinas,
employees,
carros, pagos, todo.
and cars and all of these items,
Cuando tú haces tu reporte, en realidad tú reflejas negativo porque tuviste más gastos que
once you do all your reporting and you run the numbers and you see that you actually had more in costs incurred than the earnings.
¿Es bueno o es malo? Porque yo hice esto,
Is that
estaba
good or
haciendo,
bad?
y a la hora de
Because
pedir
I've done
un
this.
préstamo para mi empresa,
And
me
when I
negaron
go
todo porque
to
todo estaba negativo.
when I go to ask for a business loan, they did not render it because I had negatives on my business.
Yeah. Was there a question in there? Yeah, that is a problem. One of my clients had a couple different business ventures, a food truck, pool supply, bought an $82,000 pickup truck. He could have written off that entire pickup truck and created a loss. However, he wants to be able to refinance his house coming up here pretty soon. And so we did not deduct the whole $82,000 in the pickup truck. And by the way, that's a whole nother topic of depreciation. So there's, lots of ins and outs there too. Other areas for deductions, work-related travel and meals. Again, is it ordinary and necessary? And certain circumstances, meals now, they've kind of tightened down on those again. They're not 100% deductible going forward anymore. And then, charitable donations, that's actually not really always a business deduction anyway. And then just work with a CPA or a tax professional. Make sure you understand what the requirements are and that the information, it's good information.
Que asegurar que la información que tienen es buena información.
So tengo una pregunta más.
So I have one more question, and then I want to ask any more.
Veo que es muy profesional y sé que está haciendo, que sabe lo que está haciendo. Si ella también agarra nuevos clientes para ir con ella.
Do you take me? I'm sorry.
Ok, le vuelvo a repetir. Como veo que ella es muy profesional y sabe lo que está haciendo, si ella está agarrando nuevos clientes para poderlo dirigir con ella. Porque no se encuentra gente de verdad que sepa hacer las cosas bien, porque todo el mundo está mal informado.
So he.
He's paying you compliments.
Yes. So he is saying it sounds like you're doing business the right way and that you are going through and doing your due diligence. So how can we get your information so that we can send clients your way?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you can actually, if you want to come see me, I have some business cards with me. So I didn't put it on your information, although I guess, oops.
So we can roll it back. So you do take new clients, right?
I do take new clients, yes.
Excellent.
Yo tengo una pregunta.
I have a question.
Acerca de lo que cuando das donaciones.
In terms of the donation side?
¿Es una cantidad exacta para que sea deductible? ¿O cómo podemos saber en dónde poder dar donaciones que sean deductibles para nuestro negocio?
Is there a certain amount that you need to meet, a certain threshold for it to count as a deduction, or are there certain entities or locations where you need to give your donations in order for them to be considered a donation?
Either.
Oh, that question was all about donations?
Yeah.
Fue sobre donativos.
Yeah, no, it just needs to be given to an organization that is a recognized nonprofit 501c3 or similar type of organization. And if what?
I think she was asking if there's a limit and if there's like a minimum and a
There's not a minimum, although it may not benefit you since they changed the law about 5 years ago. The standard deduction is usually higher than most people give in donations. The standard deduction for an individual is about $14,000, and the for married couples about $25,000. And so if all of your deductions don't add up to more than that, then you're not going to itemize your deductions anyway. The maximum for donations that you can take is 60% of your adjusted gross income. Very few people that I see meet that, so that's a lot.
And so is there a particular, so this is for a sole proprietor, but what about a corporation? Can they deduct any donations?
No, they cannot. It's a 10% limitation on a
10%
corporation.
on their income?
On their income, yeah.
But they can,
But they can carry it forward for
I see.
5 years.
And they can still consider that, right? So sponsoring a game at the high school as a corporation, stuff
Well,
like
you're
that.
talking about a C corporation. An S corporation, those donations all get passed through to the individual anyway.
Right,
So,
but only for C Corps. So C Corps don't have any type of restriction, right?
right. Yeah, so you may be better off, I don't know. You have to talk to a tax
Depending on the
advisor.
situation.
Yeah.
Perdón, iba a decir un número cuando dijo organizaciones reconocidas que tengan un número, algo así.
501C3, una organización no lucrativa.
501.
La iglesia, todos.
Ellos lo van a decir si son deducibles.
Pero por ejemplo, si yo quiero hacer una donación para...
So for example, if I want to make a deduction,
If
I wanna establish it as a deduction, I want to be able to give money to where it's actually going to count. And so
doctor is saying you need to make sure that they are registered as a 501c3. So ask them, and I know that some people ask, but you're not really sure. And young lady is telling her that she can ask for a tax donation letter.
Yeah.
Where that information would be included.
If you give somebody more than $250, a nonprofit organization, they are required to give you an acknowledgement letter. And if they don't do that, then there's something's not right there.
Guys, we're coming up to the end of the program. I really appreciate your questions. They're fascinating, and I can stay. I'm not sure if Christina is able to stay a little longer.
Yeah.
But first, I want to give you a word of gratitude for
sure.
sharing your time with us. Thank you. And I think one of the takeaways from today is that every situation is very different, right? So you got to make sure that the advice you're getting, don't go to ChatGPT and assume that it's all perfect, right? You do need to solicit your information specifically for yourself, because you may have more employees than the other person. You may have payroll of one individual versus 20. You may have a donation that is of a sizable amount or a smaller amount. You may have your family situation and your individual tax return will affect those responses. So everything is different. Having said that, I want to make sure that you know that my class is an accounting information systems class. We have a gentleman here, Lenny. If you could just stand up real quick. He is one of our brilliant students today. The class is set up in such a way that senior students that are about to graduate are paired up with a small business through the Women Entrepreneur Center. And so we work together with them to make sure that they can help you set up your QuickBooks or any other type of accounting software. We can also help you start getting your bookkeeping done so we can train you. And then we'll ask you to come directly to one of our workshops, sit along with your students, a team of students that are gonna guide you and take you there. So if you're interested, I have business cards at the front desk. Please let me know so that I can prepare you now. They only have about 15 to 20 hours, so that you don't get a bookkeeper for free for the rest of the year, right? But you do get a little push. We get you set up. We get 15 hours for you to work with them. That's sufficient, and it just happens between the last 6 weeks of the semester, last 8 weeks of the semester, right? So a month and a half to 2 months. So we gotta move fast. You gotta be dedicated. You gotta be able to be responsive to them. And then we want to help you. We want to help elevate your business. Want to help you answer all of those questions. So if you're interested, once again, get our card.